All right, guys. Welcome back to the Raised Hunting Podcast. I'm David Holder, and I'm joined today by two pain in the asses. That's all there is to it. So, again, as always, I'm apologizing now because I'm quite certain that there is going to be something that comes out that should not out of his or his mouth. So there you go. I've covered us for the day.
Might as well send it earlier. Why was his thumb messed up again?
Because it was shoved up his ass.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you show it with your thumb?
They're so funny. I got something going on with my thumb. It swelled up on me.
That's what happens, folks, when you sit around with your thumb up your butt.
It's like
right
pink
there.
eye just on your finger.
It was better than all my
Jeez.
Have you had that one before too?
No, I've never had. But I can tell you, if they gave me this kind of ointment to put on it, it would be kind of cool, I guess.
Cool. What the frick?
All right. We're going to get back to talking about whitetail deer hunting. And what we're going to do today is something a little bit different, not a lot different, but you guys are now starting to send tons and tons of messages, which is awesome. But a lot of guys are asking about scenarios for their farms and things like that. So we picked out a couple that we think that we can help a group of people rather than, but we'll help these people specifically as well. We do have an update that I want to give you on the two gentlemen that we brought up last week that were going to be chasing a very big deer, and they were trying to figure out who should hunt it or whatever. They contacted us, said they sure appreciate our input, and they've determined that they're going to hunt together. The two of them are going to sit together and try to kill the deer that way. The one did say that he would not, his buddy gets his bow only. I would warn you on that. We've experienced that where if you both of you take your bow and whoever gets the shot, don't try to think that you are going to get one or two or three opportunities. You're probably going to get one opportunity at that deer, and whoever's got it, take it. And that's my 2 cents on that. With that, Warren, you got some messages that you need to read, or what do we got?
Mostly shout outs.
Okay.
One, you guys keep leaving the reviews. We really appreciate those. So Apple, Spotify, if you would, please leave those for us. They help us out a lot. BDone09 on Apple Podcasts. He says, best podcast. I listen to this podcast on my 2-hour drive to the fire department I work for. Always learning something new. Also reminds me of how my old man is with me listening to you guys go back and forth. Keep it up. Hands down, the best podcast. Appreciate you. Apple, step it up, guys. Step it up. Spotify's just keep roasting you.
Hey, do you know you can comment on Spotify now?
No, I did not.
Yeah.
I gave up after
You can
the
comment
first 7
on
months.
our podcast now, I think. That's what I heard. I don't know how to do it, but it's a thing. It has been proven it's a thing, so if you guys can figure that one out, that would be interesting.
That's funny because I just had a guy that wrote in and said, I still can't figure out how to comment on Spotify.
I did just see it on a different podcast I listened to.
Oh.
But that's a big boy one.
Big boy one. What do you mean a big boy one?
It's a Sean Ryan podcast. It's freaking huge.
Well,
way bigger than
freaking
ours.
Raised Hunting's way bigger than that.
I wish. Why are you eating that right now?
I'm starving, and I have to eat it with my medicine.
You guys give me crap
my
for a
God.
silent, calm, warm
have to
cookie.
kick him out.
Can't hear
out of
anything,
this.
but you guys give me crap for it. And then you're over here.
Adam Dabdowd, this is your problem. Right there. He said on his last comment was, the podcast starts at 9:30, LOL, just so everybody else knows.
Yeah,
Meaning
no
the
crap.
9-minute and 30-second mark. Because we have to deal with you munching on
We
veggie
need to
straws
do
for
better.
the first 9
cut that
minutes.
out. Like, as in, we need to start the crap earlier. I can't stand podcasts that ramble for 17 minutes before they get into it.
As you Randall for another 43 seconds. Jeremy Rupsick says, OMG, Nick is the worst. As Trump would say, you're fired. Nick's just catching strays. I don't know what you did last week, but I don't know if you did anything. Trevor RN. Trevor 3431. He says, to answer Warren's question, we have a 20-man dynasty football league. That's pretty big. David Harrison says, oh, man, from day one listening to you guys, I've dreamed about the opportunity to possibly be on the Raised Pro staff. Definitely put me on a list of possible candidates. Another great podcast, guys. Easton, can't wait to see the podcast shirts. David, you have done great things in the hunting industry, but the number one thing is passing down your love and passion to the outdoors, passion for the outdoors with your sons. God bless you all.
Thank you, brother. Who was that?
David Harrison.
David Harrison.
Oh, he's a G.
Yeah, we should, but make sure that he knows that there is a form that if he'll go fill it out on our website, go to contact us, and there's an ambassador form that you can fill out so that we have you guys start. We're compiling a list so that we can actually start reaching out because we are going to probably be looking for some ambassadors in the near future.
Yes, going into next year for sure. With that being said, B&B Custom Game Calls. He's an OG. I have a 12-year-old pit bull that had a broken leg from the previous owner. I'm going to have to check out the Raised Canine products. With that being said, on our website, we do sell products. We have Raised
Canines.
We also have Raised Scents and Raised Knocks. Okay, so you can get that stuff on our website. We got to let you guys know that, so that way if you want to buy any of our stuff, you can go there and do it, which
we'll have to do
most of you
on that.
probably already have because you guys all go and buy everything. So we really appreciate that.
On the canine stuff, because I don't know what happened to him, but he's got a gash under his – Christo's got a gash under his armpit, on his front arm. So that'll be a mud repair, Raised Canine mud. Yep. We'll have to do some videos of that, putting it on there for you guys.
James Mass 9060 says, great video. Can't wait for the season to start here in Kansas. Hopefully I'll have a good story to tell you soon. Good luck to y'all and everyone else getting ready for the season. Adam Schronk 3620 says, right on, Warren. One of the few people that didn't stumble over the C in my last name. The Central Texas ground is hard as a rock. Had to use water, auger, rebar, and a little more concrete. Quite the workout, but they are in. Looking forward to seeing how they work.
Wow.
Always enjoy the podcast. I like the detailed videos on how to use your products. Plan on trying more of them. Keep doing what you do.
I thought we did a lot.
Oh, yeah, boy, that would be tough. I'll be very curious to see how that does for you, Adam. I'll be interested in your environment if that's much different. The Chase 810. Sorry I missed last week. I'm back, though. The white pine and black pine joke is way too funny. William Ayers, SP4TT, says another great episode. Eric Robards, 1209, says another good one, boys. Today, boys, I'm all for podcast apparel. Got to rep the best hunting podcast on the web. Scrape Addict is working amazing on my farm. So,
you man.
Appreciate all you guys. Do you want me to read this first one?
Yeah, I think you were going in order from that one to this one to the next one, right?
Yep. So the first one I'm going to read here is from somebody on Instagram. It said, hey, guys, just got permission to do food plots and bow hunt on a new chunk of property. Just curious if there's any specifics to finding bedding areas. I've been walking the property, but I don't want to walk it too much and screw up the deer patterns and things like that. Anything helps. Thank you. He says, also love the podcast. Listen to it and we're at work all the time.
Nice,
yeah. Some of your employers must hate us. So, all right, where do we want to start on that? I think we need to go over.
Question is, how do you find bedding areas? Is that what it is?
I think we need to define what is a bedding area because I have seen that question a lot. So, first off, let's define what is a bedding area.
Or I think the biggest mix-up would be when you're say, for instance, you see a buck go bed down or something versus where a group or those deer that are residents in that area naturally bed.
Okay, so
like during the rut, there's times you'll see them suckers get all tired and bed down for a little. BG, we saw them sleep in there for a little bit, but that wasn't necessarily an exact bedding area.
I would define that as a bedding area.
I don't know that farm that well. I'm just going off the fact that normally there's not deer bedded under you guys.
Actually, a lot there in that one. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
I'll make this really simple. I look for pillows and blankets.
You've been waiting that long to say that joke.
They're laughing.
It is Nick.
Well, he's. It's. I mean, you can always tell this. The age and stuff by the type of blanket if it's got like Star Trek on it or something like that. So, no, the area he's talking about, the bedding area that Warren is referring with BG sleeping there. I mean, that is a bedding, heavily.
Well, I've never
used
hunted
bedding
it, so
area.
I eat my words on that one. But I was trying to refer to something where you see one or two going somewhere and they bed. That's what I would say is the difference.
I have more to say.
You always have more to say.
The reason I moved that stand is because there was too many deer bedding underneath the stand. I didn't want to be in the bedding area.
First off,
define a bedding area.
And you're confusing the hell out of people. a bedding area. What is your definition of a bedding area? Star Trek.
My definition is going to be any area that the deer are using for a length of time, not a rest area, an area where more than one deer typically goes, or one deer goes, because some bedding areas are very small, some are larger. What I mean by that is waterways in Iowa are a lot of times bedding areas for deer, particularly good bucks, older bucks, because they find areas they can get away from everyone else. They're not molested there very much. However, other areas, for instance, by my house, between us and the neighbor, what?
You couldn't have used a better word.
You guys are, see, I knew that the apology.
It doesn't even fit
He's
right.
terrified of black pines, that deer.
Yeah, no kidding. You should apologize for yourself.
No, because the deer get messed with, which is molested. That's the right word for that.
You could use harassed.
Whatever. Oh, then you guys would have giggled.
Bothered.
Oh, he said harassed.
Okay, so I would agree with you for the most part. I would define a bedding area as anywhere that a more than one deer consistently bed. And that does not necessarily mean that it has to be timber. In fact, out west, I would say that CRP or tall natural grasses can be the bedding areas more often than even the timber.
Not even wet. I mean, Midwest would be included in that.
Right. So first off, we have to understand that bedding areas are it's subjective to wherever the deer are choosing to spend their time and where they're choosing to bed. So I think the second part of that then is, how do you find those areas and what are you looking for? And I think it would be even more difficult to define this in the timber. So there's some places in the timber that I would not say that this is a bedding area. And there's other areas that I'm saying that they are a bedding area. How do you define?
I think the
what
place
those are?
that you just talked about, where we're talking about that, so there's a farm that we hunt, and it's a 25-acre chunk of timber is all, and in the center of that timber, these deer bed there, and I put that stand there, assuming the deer would spend time there. It's between two food sources. When I say between two food, well, it's actually 3 food sources. It's almost like a peninsula that goes up into it, and I put the stand there thinking that they would come out of the food sources and spend some time there and move on. They wouldn't stay right there. But then after I started hunting, I started realizing they were only getting 150 yards, 200 yards off of the food source and laying there. I believe that if I had just walked through that looking, I would not have picked that up as a bedding area. The only time that I would tell you that I would have been able to say this looks like a good bedding area would have been in the winter.
How thick is it?
It's not. I mean, it's not heavily wooded, you can see through the timber 75, 100 yards. You know, when you're standing up, out deer bedded, probably can't see quite that far. But the fact is the way I know of another place that it's not ours. Our neighbor has a place that's just like that. Where his ground, where the deer don't go very far, they just go right into the timber, and then that's it. That is a bedding area that they're going to right there. But in that particular case, that one would be much more difficult to find. I think some of the things that I look for to pick up on bedding areas is direction of terrain. Meaning, if you got something running north and south, so that the slopes are in the east and west. Does that make sense? So tip ridge is running like this, north and south, and so you got an east and west. I'm going to look on the east side of a lot of those areas first during the fall. I mean, and then the other big one is, if it depends on what time of year, I think deer change where they bed some. And I think that as it gets colder weather, they move to the south, the southerly faces. And the reason that we know that is that's where we pick up more sheds on those ridges, is those deer are bedded on the south sides of those ridges.
Yep. So let's try to stay for a hunting focus here.
I use the stuff that I do.
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to determine bedding areas, in my opinion, is going to be during shed season. That's going to be the easiest way. Now, let's just say that you don't have that ability right now. I would define, if I had to break down bedding areas, in my opinion, you have 2 levels to a bedding area. One, I would say, is the core of the bedding area. You're in the thick of it. And then the second portion of that would be the level 2, and it's a fringe of the bedding area. You're right on the edge of it. How I would define that personally, of this is inside the core of a bedding area, is if I'm in a timbered area, I'm just going to say a timbered area because this is going to make the most sense. If I'm going through a timbered area, and we'll just say the whole thing's 100 acres of timber, and I'm going through that area, and I'm walking it all, and I find an area that has a rub every 10 steps, somewhere I can stand in one location, and I can look around me in every direction and see at least a rub. That is, and then likely a couple scrapes and a lot of sign and probably beds, depending on if there's cattle in it or things like that. It can eat down enough of the grasses and stuff that's hard to see. But what that does, now I'm able to me, there's a lot of deer spending a lot.
Are you saying that's a bedding area, or are you saying that's a fringe?
I'm saying that's the core of the bedding area. If you're in the middle of the timber and you look around and there's scrapes all over the place and rubs everywhere, in my opinion, you are in the heat of the bedding area. The other way that you'll know during the fall is if you jump deer out of there. That is definitely inside of the bedding area. And then I think that, it's kind of hard to explain at a basic level because you're going to have to understand what you're looking at. As you get further and further out from that, and the less and less sign that you see, in my opinion, you're now more towards the fringe of the bedding area. It would be transition areas or places that the deer are coming from, going to get to their bedding area or to go to food. So that's kind of how I look at them and how I define them in my own head for me.
I'm the flat out opposite.
In what way?
Like if I see a lot of sign and stuff in one area, that's what I'm thinking is it's a core of a bedding area. But if I'm seeing scrapes, rubs, everything else, that to me is telling me it's on the way out or not right in the center. Because every place that I have those, they will not bed there for the life of them. But they'll bed 40, 50, 60 yards down the way where it gets a lot thicker. And I won't find rubs and scrapes in that. But I'll find all their sign and everything. Then right on the outside where they're leaving, going somewhere, that's where everything is. Where they'll have 10 rubs in one freaking 40-yard area.
You remember where Joey found his shed?
No.
His first shed?
Oh, yeah.
That is absolute center of a bedding area.
Well, see,
it's ripped up.
The deer Joey passed, Elway, that right there ain't a bedding area. And that little meadow right there, they hammer.
Yeah, but you can look at that and tell that's not a rubbing area, or not a bedding area.
How do you know that?
Because there's not enough cover.
Okay.
There's not enough cover, and there's not enough.
So you got to define it better because we're now to points where you're going to see both, and neither are going to be definitive on what a bedding area is.
In my opinion, in that exact instance, I would never look at that and be like, this is going to be a bedding area because there's just not enough. There's not enough cover for those deer to feel secure and comfortable.
I agree, but I don't know how we're supposed to explain that.
Well, I think that's one of the things as opposed to sign from deer. I'm always looking for sign from deer, meaning I need to know the deer are here. Beds are one thing. I can't say that I rely as much on rubs or scrapes. I think more of that goes on outside of the bedding area. What I'm looking at is the terrain, basically, and what offer or the what's the correct term for the types of trees and shrubs and things like that offer a really good place of cover. Because where a lot of other animals, elk and mule deer and things like that, antelope, don't do what whitetails do. Whitetails will get into a place where they can't see 3 foot in front of them, and they do it on purpose. They feel comfortable in that. And so heavy areas, I mean, one of the greatest bedding areas that you'll find across, this comes from Arkansas and Virginia, where I think of it more, is old home places. You'll find these deer bedding around where like something no one's been living there for years, and it's all grown up around there. Those deer will find those areas and bed in those areas. And the great thing about those is typically they got fence rows coming out of there. They kind of almost like a highway telling you where they're going. So those can be really good areas. I love the fact that like CRP, like you were talking about, that kind of stuff. And the waterways in Iowa are easy to identify where they would bed and where they wouldn't. Because some of them you can walk up to a waterway. And if you guys aren't familiar with the waterway, it's basically too wet in between a field. And so the farmer can't plant it. And so it's high regular grasses in between corn or beans or whatever they have there.
It's intentional. They use it for drainage.
Yes. I mean, and so, but my point is there's no crop there, and that's intentional. And then sometimes the grass is real short. That's not probably going to be used as a bedding area. But in other areas, there might be a ditch involved, and the grasses get really tall, and those deer will get in there And again, those bucks will find those places, especially during the rut, and push does out there where all the other bucks aren't messing with him. And that can be a really, I mean, I know of more than one person that has killed a deer because they were bird hunting or doing something. They bumped the deer out of something like that. Then the next time the farmer tells them, oh yeah, I jumped that deer all the time there. And all of a sudden they figure out that's his bedding area. And that's how they kill him.
Well, so
I feel like we've answered this awfully.
no, I think that's why this makes it a good question, because we're having a lot harder time defining what a bedding area is than what we thought we were going to. So
I don't
obviously
think
it's a good
definitive
question.
is the issue.
I agree. I think that a lot of it is going to be.
I also think it's an overthought thing. But go on.
I think you have to scout it, because here would be my one argument to you. I don't know about you as much, but do you mostly on? Here's why I think that when you find these areas that the rubs are all over the place inside of those bedding areas, that it's a bedding area, is because I don't think that deer is spending the majority of his time there at night. He's spending the majority of his time there during the day, and so he's in there, and he just hasn't laid down yet, and so he'll rip up a tree, or he'll mark his territory, and he'll have it hit a scrape, and then you have a lot of different deer going through there, especially when you get towards the rut. My argument with you is most of the places that you hunt, you don't go through the middle of their bedding areas. Like, I bet you if you went through where Juice lived, you'd be like, holy shit, because that whole thing is going to be shredded.
I don't know. I don't see.
I know it is from shed hunting it.
Yeah, but I don't feel like we find a whole bunch of you'll find a one or two big rubs that show up there.
And that's not what I'm talking about. Is not solely big ones. I'm saying
just
every
a whole bunch
tree,
of them.
Yeah,
right.
they're just hitting them. But I think it's a good question, because I think it is a lot harder to find than what we think. And is what I would tell him in that instance when he says he's afraid of messing it up. I'm telling you, go hog wild. Get in there and learn that shit and walk all of it, and then be marking where you jumped deer out of their beds. Go during the middle of the day and walk the whole thing, because you're going to be way better off knowing where those deer are and knowing how the property lays at the beginning of the season and running some deer out than you are not having a clue what they do for the entirety of the season because you're trying to be careful. Everybody thinks that you're going to go through there one time and those deer are going to be gone forever. In my opinion, that's not going to happen. That's not the case.
Especially, I mean, you just look at the majority of pieces of ground that guys are hunting, whether it's private or public, they're not that big. And so the chances of them getting jumped some other time by someone else is good. And it could be a guy with a chainsaw. It could be a lady walking her dog. I mean, there's a multitude of things. And so unless you do it repeatedly to them, like where he doesn't feel comfortable anymore, then I don't think they're going to alter their pattern by getting jumped once, or even twice possibly. And then I go down that it depends on your property, though. I mean, if you own 5,000 acres and no one ever goes in there, your deer might be a little more subject to not dealing with much, But
one time, though, I think you're
even one time. I think you're okay. I think you can go do what you need to do.
Yep.
I am not going to lie to you. I think that trying to determine exact bedding locations, unless you're somebody that hunts right up in next to them, is overthought like no other. Like, yes, I mean, I can't speak on new properties all that much because a lot of the places I've been hunting for a few years now. But when I got permission on a lot of them, we walked a lot. We went and checked a lot of different things. That gave us a general idea of where things were going to be, idea of stuff. But after that, I have a pretty good idea of just understanding the land, where they're probably going to like to bed here, bed here, bed here. And I don't ever set up my stuff inside of those areas unless there's a few exceptions to that. So I think it's a lot easier to figure out when you go sit somewhere, you start further away and you sit in a stand, you're going to see where they're coming from. And you're going to have a pretty good idea where they're coming from every freaking time, because you'll watch 15 or 20 of them come walking out of the same spot. And that's a pretty good indication that they probably bedded back in there somewhere. So I think it gets overthought like no other, because it's not like you want to be right in the center of it anyways. I mean, I don't. There's no way am I sitting right in the center of a bedding area.
I like being in the center of them.
I don't, because
Not
I
quite
get winded
right in
left
the
and right.
smack
I
middle of it, but like on the edge of the center. Yeah, I like that. That would be the other thing I would agree. I would agree 100% with. Like, I think that people up till September 15th, they try to say that they know where the buck is bedding. I know where he's bedding. I think you know a region that he's bedding.
Yeah.
I don't think that bucks sit there and use the same bed over and over and over once you get past their summer pattern, personally. I think
we already
bed
know
in the
that.
same area, but I don't think they're going in the bed in the same spot.
I don't know. They can for a time, and the one I would think of is when Tyler tried to get you to come shoot the 2 deer that were, and that was, when is our youth season?
September 15th.
September 15th. So
That's summer pattern.
well,
That was the last time. And then the next week they
were
gone.
gone. The one that I guess that I don't hear any of us talking about is wind direction. I think these deer are smart enough. A lot of times they're laying where they can see one direction and smell what's behind them. And they do it a lot.
I don't know. If you want to take that one, go ahead and add it to another list of overthinking to where you don't shoot what you're wanting to shoot. That is.
What?
I agree. But the amount of crap that we can add into some of this stuff, like they're going to change their bedding on this, and this, and they're going to change what way they come out of it because of this, and this, and then they're going to do this, and this. It's just overcomplicating like no other.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I think the whole wind thing that people say that they're like, well, the one that always I find hilarious is that they're always going to have the wind quartered to their face. They're not that smart.
I don't think they can always do that, but I think
they would end up in
that they'll go
North
to a different
Dakota.
bedding area because of the wind, so that they can have
the wind.
like antelope are really easy to tell on because a lot of times they face the opposite way of the wind because they know they'll smell behind them and they can see in front of them.
And I think white-tailed deer do. I think any prey animal is going to naturally do. An animal that's being preyed upon is going to do that.
See, I think that they'll just turn around. They'll get to the same area that they like to bed, and they're going to face that way instead of that way, for depending on the wind direction.
I think they're smarter than that. I mean, I think there are times.
I'm just trying to think of some of these really thick bedding areas, though.
Where
would that give them an advantage?
The one I can tell you that it would is Gobbler Knob.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is if it's that thick in there,
the wind 90% of the time is out of the west, whether it's northwest or southwest.
Move your hand.
Right.
And so if they're laying on the east side of that ridge, then they always have the wind at their back.
Right, but they didn't gain anything because they can't see far enough.
Well, that's the timber but they can. The wind is telling them more than their eyes are.
Right, but what I'm saying is I'm a predator, and if they bed in something where they can only see 10 feet anyways, I can just come from the other direction. Make sure that I'm not downwind, that the deer isn't downwind.
I don't think that. I think when they get into like heavy cover, I don't think that they're relying as much on the wind as what they are, because now they can tell if something's coming because it's got to come through the thick stuff, like big tall weeds, CRP type thing. I think a deer will know if even a coyote was coming through there.
But so then they don't care about the wind?
No, I think they still do. They still get the wind situated like they want, but it's not. They're not worried about as much about seeing.
But so let's just take CRP for instance. So a deer's gonna go bed in a CRP field. One day the wind is out of the west, and he beds in the CRP. Okay, now the wind is out of the north.
He still would bed in the CRP probably.
What did he gain from that?
What I'm saying is, because the CRP is not going to be
now if you're
10 feet.
If you're going to say
he's got a big area, and so would he lay on one side of the hill as opposed to another? Absolutely, I think he would.
It'd make more sense if you said, okay, he's going to go and he's going to bed in the timber today because he's losing some kind of advantage by having a north wind in the CRP that he doesn't have in the timber.
Without knowing exactly where we're talking about, I can't. I can just tell you I can look at something and I feel pretty confident that they're probably not going to bed here today. I will use where I killed the big 8. The wind, when it's a windy day, those deer are down there.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're not
in any direction though.
They're not just in any direction, but they're down in there. They get out of the wind.
The wind is in any direction. If it's really windy, they will be there no matter what.
It's typically out of the west when it's like that. I don't think I've ever seen a time when the wind is 40 miles an hour here out of the east. It's always, when it comes, it's either west or northwest or southwest.
My point was that it doesn't matter what the direction is. That is they getting out of the wind.
Agreed.
So it has nothing to do with wind direction.
What I'm saying is that you are thinking that just because they bed in a particular, like that they're going into the drainage to get out of the wind, that I'm saying that they're always in the same spot. I'm not. I'm saying that they will adjust according to the wind, I think.
I hope that that's right.
It'd be a lot more predictable.
Yeah, they'd be easier to kill. If that's truly true, those deer should be easier to kill. Because then you should be able to, they're gonna be consistent on what they're doing with each of those wind directions to allow you to be able to then find some way to capitalize on that and kill them.
I think that's exactly what these guys that are talking about them quartering into the wind, coming into a food plot or whatever. I think that's what they're talking about. I don't think that they're talking about the deer always walks with the wind quartered into his face and then he just walks whichever way the wind, that's where he goes. That's not
that's just illogical. That's not what they're meaning, I don't think.
Right.
Well,
but
I disagree. Some of these guys are talking about that they'll circle an entire food plot before they'll come in and stuff.
Shane will tell you they will.
Some deer probably may do that. I don't think the majority are doing that. And that I also think that's a big part of the reason I don't like hunting food, because I want to be where they're at during the day, not where they're going to be going and they're going to be nervous about going out in the field. But we're way off topic.
Well, we are talking about bedding.
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking about the wind.
we were talking about the wind effect. I was talking about the wind affecting the bedding.
Clearly, we have different opinions on the wind affecting where they bed. But I will say, I do think out of my experience in what our next topic would be about funnels, of not having enough funnels, natural funnels out of a bedding area, left me with a bedding area that had 4 or 5 different places that they would consistently go out of. But I never knew which one it would be. And they were far enough apart that I wouldn't be able to hunt it. And my theory on that was, I guess it's a theory, but it was kind of proven pretty obviously. Depending on what the wind was, they would always be bedding in the same area, but depending on what the wind was, it would determine which way they went out or what food they went to. So in my opinion, your wind direction would affect where they're going to be going to more so than where they're going to bed. Because where they're going to bed is, unless they have multiple areas that they're comfortable and safe in, they're probably not going to want to bed somewhere else. When they come out of that bedding area and the wind has changed or whatever, they're probably going to want to have the wind at their advantage when they're moving to somewhere else.
Okay. I was trying to
Am I
think.
just talking to myself here?
No, I'm trying to. I was actually trying to think of. Have we killed? Has anyone of us specifically killed a buck that we feel like we knew he was bedded right there, going to come to this direction to us?
I did, but it wasn't intentional.
Well,
he just bedded under us for 45 minutes and then walked right to me, and I shot him.
No, that's not the bedding I'm talking about.
8 or 9 I shot, like in
straight up 100% came from where I was positive he was bedding. He came from right where I expected him to come from.
I've got like 5 off the top of my head I can think of that are doing that.
Well, I mean, are we talking like we know exactly where they were bedding, or
with,
we just
within 100, 200 yards, something? I mean, I don't know how big you want to make the.
Bullwinkle is the only one I can think of.
My biggest one was I knew where he was. I didn't know him specifically. I knew they all bedded right there, and that's where he came from. The deer I shot with you 2 years ago, we knew exactly where he was bedded. The 8 that I shot in 18. That was in the same stand me and you hunted and saw a bunch of freaking big deer. I knew where he was bedded.
I think he's talking exact bedding.
Yeah, that one I knew
like
exactly
that
where
buck particularly.
That buck I knew he was up in there.
What 8?
The 8 that I was alone. The stand where we saw BZ
okay.
and
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
I knew he was bedded in that finger. There was nowhere else.
Yeah,
for him
but
to
you
bed.
didn't know that buck was there.
I had seen him that day. But I didn't know if he would come in. But he was in that. I knew he was where he was.
Yeah, I think Dad's talking about like a deer that we've had history with and that we know and stuff, and that we were able to say.
Juice would be another one that
what does it matter?
We knew where he was bedding at.
Because we're not just saying a deer came out of there. We're saying that we knew this deer is bedding there. Yeah, Juice, I would agree 100% that we knew where he was.
Where he was
bedding consistently.
Because that was the same place that Junior was bedding right there.
Yeah, Junior had to have been, because he was coming out of the same exact spot every time. I agree. Junior had to have been doing the same thing too. I think Bullwinkle was the only other one I think was doing that. I think Bullwinkle was smart enough that I think he'd figured out an exact spot that he could sit that he always knew. who was going in and who was going out. So outside of those ones, though, I can't say that I knew for sure. I don't think. I'm trying to think of the deer I've killed. Magnum, I roughly knew. I didn't know exactly. That Big Ten, same thing, roughly.
Base drop was another one that I knew where he was going to bed.
Yeah, you knew where he was going to go be.
I was sitting between where he was feeding and where he wanted to go bed.
Yep. That one's nice, though, because
it's small.
Yeah.
He doesn't have much of a choice, which is the same thing that we're talking about with BG. That particular spot is pretty easy.
Yeah, if he gets in there, you're probably going to get a shot.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. That's ones I can think
of. But here's what I guess what I would clarify when we sit here and we sound like, oh, man, we really know the bedding areas. We learned a lot about those bedding areas from hunting.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think what Warren is saying, we're not saying go pound around your ground just to screw it up or try to screw it up. But the more that you are on your ground, the more you hunt it, the more you're out there, the more you're going to learn about it, and it's going to pay off. I can tell you it's tough for someone to take a brand new farm and kill a good deer on it, a mature deer, brand new, meaning like you just got it like this gentleman's talking about. That's tough a lot of times to do it in the first year or do it with any consistency, to be able to say, okay, I've narrowed in on this deer right away. But boy, in year 2, year 3, you start figuring stuff out, and all of a sudden your deer sightings are better, your mature buck sightings are better, and you just keep all that. That's where OnX, you probably do the best job of all of us as logging all your stuff on OnX.
It's not organized, but I do log it all.
Yeah, but you can't even understand what it is because it is all the exact same color, the exact same thing, no label, nothing, just freaking red pins everywhere.
Well, I've just seen that he has a lot of information on it.
It is awful. I cannot look at your OnX without. That's the only reason I went and got my own OnX, because we used to share one when I was first like 16, 17, and finally I was about to blow up. I said, I'm just going to pay for it. Screw it. I'll stop mooching.
I do. I put everything on there, and it does help a lot. The biggest thing I've ever started doing on OnX that I think killed a lot of deer is when I started marking them. It is amazing how much of a pattern shows up. Yeah, when you start marking where you saw them and the time and the date and the conditions and everything, all of a sudden you'll have Ralph has been in this area every single time that I've managed to see him. It lets you zone in.
Yeah, especially if you write the time of day, you got the picture that you saw him in, stuff like that.
Which that's what I do in all of the notes.
Right.
And then during shed season now that I know how to do it, I take a picture of scrapes or rubs or things like that I'm like, there's a lot of traffic here, and then I put that in there too. That way when in the fall, if I want to go hang a stand there or I'm looking for a spot to go sit or something, I can look at my OnX and I have an idea.
Yeah. All right. What's the next one? You said it one led into the other.
Well, he just was wanting to talk about this one next, and I kind of referred to both. This is a gentleman by the name of Jacob. He sent us an email. Said this year he's trying to learn about natural funnels. He said, this year I am trying to do more time scouting on new pieces of public and private ground. He is here in Iowa. I won't specify where. You hear people talking all the time about finding natural funnels and sitting there during the rut. I'm new to your podcast, and I'm not sure if you guys have covered this yet, but I would really appreciate if you could show us what natural funnels look like using topographic maps or what to look for. I've looked at videos and somewhat understand it, but it's still confusing at times where the elevation may not change much. I could send pictures if you're wanting them. So basically identifying a funnel.
Well, we don't have any way to illustrate for him. I mean, to really, because
this is why we had said this is going to be a video that we'll have to do too.
Yeah, but I think we can at least provide some context. I'll start. So natural funnels, in my opinion, would be anything that the deer are naturally going to want to go through that to travel. So, for instance, we have a stand that we call the hill stand. It has a huge bean field, and then it's pasture and alfalfa, and then there's a big block of timber. Those deer don't just jump the fence and go through the pasture to go to the bedding area. They go into the timber, and they come onto our side, and they stay towards the top of the hill, but they stay in the timber, and they go past there to get to their bedding area. That is somewhat of a natural funnel. The problem with that area is that it doesn't pinch them down.
You
So I
also would
guess
never
there's-
know that unless you hunted it.
Yeah, you'd have to learn it.
Yeah.
Another one of the best funnels that I could think of would be Crossroads. Crossroads is a pretty good, or Hammer Stand. Hammer Stand is also a good one. So Hammer Stand, the reason to try to explain this where you guys can understand this, it's a huge block of timber, and then it just continually leans down until it's really only probably 150 yards wide. And then it's pasture ground on the west and pasture ground on the east, and then there's a road, and then there's one other little finger of timber on the other side of the road, and then ag all around it. All those deer, for the most part, come through the timber when they're coming from the south, and they cross the road, and they come right through the timber onto our side. That is what I would consider a natural funnel.
Hammer Stand I would not consider as much of a funnel as what you call Crossroads.
I think we're talking about two different Crossroads, aren't we? Same farm?
You're
we were
talking
talking about
about
putting a rub tree the other day.
Yeah.
Crossroads.
Yeah.
Ew. I was thinking about
Because what that is there's actually
That's a good one too, though.
there's a 50-yard wide sliver of timber that's off of a cornfield. Look, here's the thing. Sometimes a natural funnel is man-made. And what I mean by that is a corner of a field makes an area where the deer will typically go around the fence. And so if that juts into a ditch and there's only a 50-yard wide area between the corner of that fence and that ditch, the deer will probably not walk in the ditch, and they probably won't hop the fence twice to cut the corner. They'll go around that corner of that field. And so it's a natural funnel there. The one you're referring to, I think it's maybe 40, 50-yard wide timber that comes off that hill coming from the south, coming to the north. And then the other sliver of timber comes down, and then the big block of timber comes to there, and there's a road cut right through it and a creek. And that to me, water makes one of the biggest natural funnels, is following your creek lines. But I think when you look at OnX, when you back out on something and look down, that's where you see, I love, like, looking at a farm, period. One of the biggest things that I look for in Iowa is to see if the farm that we're about to hunt or purchase or lease or whatever the case may be, does this connect? Is there a natural funnel from another big block of timber or another one going out the other direction? That's a huge one for me.
Well, I think the other indicator of that is you have to see sign. There's got to be trails, especially like I found like certain pinch points where it's somewhere that it forces the deer to have to go through an area. Sometimes they don't like that. And so they may go around it, or they'll go somewhere else. You're going to need to see they'll have one spot there that you can see it's just trampled, and they're all going through there. You're going to have to look at it somewhat. A great example, I guess, another example I would consider a funnel is like in other parts of Iowa, like southwest Iowa, there's nowhere near as much timber, right? And so you have these little draws, these little fingers of timber in between ag fields. In my opinion, those little fingers are a funnel. The deer prefer to go down that timbered funnel or that timbered finger than they do just through the middle of the ag field. That is a funnel. It's putting them in an area where it keeps them somewhat concentrated.
That's what you were going to say there. I was going to say in a different form of, it's not always, trying to find a good funnel is not always about looking for something. It's looking for what's lacking. Like, don't get confused with the fact that you don't see anything around. There's not tall timber. There's not big hills. There's not whatever. Sometimes an open field with nothing else there besides one strip of timber or one tall grass or something, CRP, that it gives them some form of cover versus being wide open, that's enough. And most people would overlook it thinking there's no funnel here. There's nothing that is keeping them in one area, versus a funnel can also be they're migrating to one area because they're more comfortable in that spot because everything else is so open. So look for things like the funnels in the center of fields or timber in the center of fields, small strips, in my opinion, is one of the best freaking ones ever, especially during the rut.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind too in Iowa is there's a lot of places where there's a lot of deer that there is no funnels.
No, and
It
it's
is
wide
flat.
open. Oh my gosh.
And that is where that's where we use the rub trees, because the rub trees give you the ability that hopefully if they're close, that you're gonna be able to pull them now that other 50, 60 yards to come over and give you a shot, so that you're not just seeing them.
Or give them a reason to come right there.
Exactly.
Somewhere close. Yep.
But there's two places that I would, again, I go back to fence lines, and I would talk about the fence line that runs between me and my neighbor. Those deer walk that fence like no other. I mean, if you looked at that from a topographical point of view, it would just look like a block of timber. But I can tell you that you go in there and you sit on that fence line, and you will see the majority of your deer walking that fence line.
Yep.
I mean, they just follow it. OM would be another one where that is a real good
Funnel.
It's a funnel. I mean, that one is actually, I didn't think the deer would actually feel comfortable walking in it, because it's a ditch. And they do. They will walk right up in it. Matter of fact, Base Drop should have been killed right there, because he came walking.
Be a tough shot.
It was going to be a tough. I wasn't anticipating on shooting him in there.
Yep.
So the funnels that you're looking for can be fairly large or narrow down to pretty small.
Yep.
But the sign will tell you whether they're using it a lot or not.
Right.
The one thing that I would add to that, though, be very, very careful setting stands, or at least I don't. I don't set stands on really heavy trails unless I'm trying to shoot does. I just don't find that a lot of the big mature bucks walk the same trails that all the does do. They always seem to be 10 or 15 yards off one way or the other. They just don't seem to follow everyone else's pattern. Slightly. They're in the same area. They come through the same funnel, but if they're on the fence line I was just talking about, they're off of it just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and you just don't want to be on the trail anyway, so that way you're not getting busted a bunch or having to try to,
right.
When we say not on the trail, we're saying like don't put your stand where it's directly over it, not outside of range of it.
Right.
Put your rub tree where you can freaking shoot it.
Yep.
Don't
Learn
be an
that.
Easton. Yeah.
I did that too. I couldn't even get to mine.
Oh, mine, I could just watch him hit it. That was worse.
Yeah.
That was so stupid.
What were you thinking? Why did you put it? I'm just trying to figure out why you put it there.
Because it was right at the end of a funnel, and I was for whatever reason.
Why wasn't your
I
stand
didn't
at the
prepare
end?
it that well. That's what was my issue was. I thought that I was going to be able to put it right there where they're naturally kind of coming through, and I was going to be able to put a stand in one of these trees right next to it. Little did I know, when I went to go put that stand in the specific tree I set it up in front of, the wind was literally never consistent. So then I was like, looking back now, I should have just picked the tree up and moved it over there after they were smashing it, because they freaking knocked it out of the tree. They twirled it around the tree that I tied it to. I left it on the ground and just said, screw it, and they kept pushing it around. So I should have just put it back up by where the stand could go. But, that was a dumb mistake.
Typically, whenever we set rub trees, they are stand location is already or blind location is already in place. Now, we set 2 trees the other day. The first one we set is in it, but I've hunted out of that tree before. There's just not a stand in it now, so I know you can get a stand in that tree.
And it's an easy one to you
Right.
can definitely look at it and be like, you can get a tree stand in that.
And the wind's always perfect right there, because you
Should
got
be, yeah.
Well, I tell you, it's always blowing the same direction. Doesn't matter what it's doing; it's always blowing to the river.
Good.
The other one, though, that we set for Alyssa, or that Alyssa set, I feel like it should be really, really consistent. And we looked at the tree very well to be able to say we can get a stand in there.
Yep.
But typically we try to have the stand in place already and then put the rub trees in.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to do one more, or we want to jump to wacky facts?
I'd probably jump to Wacky Facts, because this one I think we could talk about for a little bit.
Yeah.
It'll take me 5 minutes to read it, because I'm a slow reader.
Okay.
But
We-
you have,
just-
what do you have?
Hold on, while he's looking for his wacky fact, I feel like we always talk about the fact that we have raised scents and we have raised canine and we have raised Knox. We always do it at the beginning of the podcast. And so if people are tuned out going, these guys aren't even gotten started with the podcast because Warren and Easton won't be quiet or take things seriously, we should probably mention it at the end. So just in case you guys did not realize, we do have several products. We love the fact that the podcast listeners are probably our number one purchasers and
by far.
and followers. I mean, you guys have done great. But if you're new to the podcast, check out our website.
And the discussion group, oh my goodness. I posted on that, I did not think that we had that many podcast listeners on there already. You guys are freaking G's. FYI, I know I haven't responded to that yet, or maybe by the time you hear it, I will have. But if you haven't followed the Raised Hunting discussion group or joined it on Facebook, do so, because that's where we're going to put some updates, things like the shirts that some of the guys were referring to earlier in comments. So, the Raised Hunting discussion group. If you're an ass, you get kicked. So
I have
we
an
are
idea
very open, non-judgmental. Ask anything you want on there. And like I said, if you're a jerk, you try to come at somebody or you give them crappy comments, you're gone. So it's a safe place for us hunters to learn. It's the only liberal thing we'll ever say.
I have an idea for the Raised Podcast T-shirt or shirt or
I
whatever.
already designed it.
You
But
did?
anyways, go
I'd
on.
like to see it. See if we're thinking the same
Actually,
thing.
I designed it originally for a Raised Hunting shirt, and then I was like, man, this is a freaking cool one. Maybe we should just do it for the podcast guys. So I need to put it on there. But what is your idea?
I can't describe
Then why
it.
bring it up?
Listen,
You're like a woman. Women always want to get, I've got a surprise for you. Oh, what's that? I'm not telling you right now. Well, don't freaking tell me about the surprise then. It's a pain in my butt. Have you got a wacky fact yet?
California.
Oh, boy.
that's a friggin' wacky fact just by itself. Give him a green one just for saying California.
No, that would be an X. We don't want to talk about California.
It's illegal to eat a frog if it died during a frog jumping competition. Frog jumping is super popular in California, with the biggest competition being held annually in Calaveras County. But if one of the frogs meets its demise at any point in the competition, its body must be destroyed as soon as possible and may not be eaten or otherwise used for any purpose.
Why?
I have no idea.
I'm kind of concerned as to who is raising their frog to be a jumper and then willing to eat it when it dies.
Well, I don't
But
think
also, why
I
is
don't think
there-
the person that owns it would eat it. I would think like one of the competitors or something reaches over and whacks the frog, then eats their frog or something.
that doesn't make any
I
more
don't
sense
know.
than what I just said.
I don't know why
Nothing
they.
in California makes any sense.
You got minus points for it being California, but I'll go with it.
Arizona. You can't have a donkey sleeping in your bathtub after 7 p.m. The oddly specific law was passed in 1924 after an Arizonian merchant's bathtub was washed down into a valley when a dam broke, carrying his dozing donkey into the troubled waters.
Sounds like he
Hundreds
was
of
doing it
people
for a
were
reason.
involved in saving the sleepy, soggy donkey, so the law was signed into action to prevent endangering future bathtub snoozing donkeys and save everyone a bunch of time and effort.
That reminds me. I would love to know if any of our listeners have ever gone out west hunting and seen taped to the table on the inside of a hotel. There is no skinning or gutting of animals in this hotel room because we've seen that sign. I don't think we provoked it either.
Oh, you definitely did.
I don't think it was there.
It was the next year.
No,
Yeah, it was.
It was
And
already
if you
there.
remember, no. It was 100% because of us. Well, because of you. And then you left all the quarters in the bathtub. So I'm sure the cleaning lady saw it.
well, she saw it there, but
You
we
left
cleaned it.
quarters in the bathtub?
No, meaning like we had them sitting in there to keep them cool.
Oh, I
like,
thought you
no,
were
we
you
didn't
left
leave
them
them.
behind.
No,
No,
we didn't leave
like,
them behind.
what?
But while we were hunting.
Yeah.
So then I'm sure when she went in there and cleaned
Oh,
it,
yeah.
all of the quarters.
You freaking tard.
I
What'd
didn't
you
have, we
think
didn't
it
have a
was gonna
cooler.
be?
We did not have a cooler.
Yeah, but you don't think that is probably what provoked them to say no skinning or
I don't
butchering animals in a freaking hotel room?
I think it happens quite often.
You know what? Just for,
I don't know about that often.
That was at you.
Mine wasn't a wacky fact, so you do whatever
Then
you
what
want.
are you trying to...
I just said it
Joey's
reminded
going to
me.
add it to the
It
statistics.
I just said it reminded me.
Warren's second wacky fact will just do this. But I will say, we got to get somewhere outside of these boring ones that are just
How is that
totally
boring?
irrelevant. Find some of these interesting ones that you're teaching us something new that's valuable for me. Those are better.
Our aunt could get arrested in Arizona for that.
Yeah, she could.
She
But things
possibly
like-
would have her
Things
donkey
like the
in
one
bathtub.
that whoever sent in, the one that deer eat the leaves, so then the leaves freaking grow needles on
Needles.
the bottom part. That is beneficial. That is cool to know and is directly relative.
It's very interesting. It's not all that wacky.
It's a good fact. It'll get a green every time. Those are freaking
I
boring.
don't care about your greens, little button man.
Well, I'm going to keep doing X's.
Oh, you do anyways, so what's it matter?
Wham, wham,
You've had a
wham.
lot of greens lately.
I don't know. I'm like Colorado, just straight cushion.
Street cushion. Whatever.
You know, because weed's illegal there.
Yeah.
Or illegal.
Okay, it pretty much is everywhere now. But anyways, you can close us out. This
I was
is your
going to, but
job.
you were talking. As usual. You're just blah, 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 blah.
Now it's going to be the other thumb.
Okay. We're out of here, guys. This is the Raised Hunting Podcast signing off. We are looking forward to seeing your guys' pictures. I think lots of hunting seasons have started, so send in your pictures and stories. Keep up the reviews and send it in, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. Like I said, we don't know everything. We do get to do this a lot, so we've seen a lot of scenarios. So hopefully we can apply that to give you some sort of feedback.
Cool.
Out.